million insulation fund agreed to with the Greens in the last few months of the last government's term, and only a fraction of the $600 million promised in the budget for the growth of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs was set aside, around 8 of the $600 million. Some initiatives were creatively funded. The $40 million purchase of St James Station was funded by, among other things, cleaning out the Nature Heritage Fund for the next 4 years.
Supplementary question.
Order.
Supplementary question.
Pesata Sam Lotu-Inga.
Supplementary question. Is the Minister aware of any other government spending commitments which have no funding set aside to pay for them?
Mr Speaker.
Honourable Bill English.
Yes. In the 2008 budget, the previous Labor government announced an economic transformation package which it claimed was worth $300 million over 3 years, but only $93 million was set aside in the budget for initiatives such as the CPI adjustment of funding for universities, literacy and numeracy in the workplace, a $40 million initiative, and other initiatives designed to, quote, help New Zealand firms compete globally. While the government had not funded all its 2008 budget, it nevertheless went on to promise larger extra expenditure such as the universal student allowance, which they could not have funded if they had won the election.
Honourable David Cunliffe.
Mr Speaker, to the Minister of Finance. Can he confirm that all of the spending promises National made were, quote, fully costed and funded and covered by the $1.75 billion spending allocation, and that he has no intention of trying to go back on any of them?
Honourable Bill English.
Yes, I can confirm National won't be going back on any of those promises because we fully costed and funded them, unlike the previous Labor government, which produced a budget in 2008 and an election campaign full of commitments it could not have funded.
Pesata Sam Lotu-Inga.
Supplementary question. What decisions is the Minister likely to make on unfunded spending commitments?
Mr Speaker, because we are a new government with new priorities, we will be committing the budget allowance to the priorities of the incoming National government with a mandate from New Zealand voters. We will drop commitments made by the previous government for which no funding has been allocated.
Honourable David Cunliffe.
Mr Speaker, can the Minister of Finance provide details of what remains of the government's proposed stimulus package, so much vaunted in their election campaign? Can he confirm that he is still committed to the $8.6 billion of infrastructure over 6 years announced by his leader on 31 October, and the $7 billion stimulus over 2 years he foreshadowed in late November? Or does he now accept the Treasury's advice that no further fiscal stimulus is necessary, and if so, why?
Supplementary. Well,
Honourable Bill English.
The Labor Party should get its lines worked out because its deputy leader is on the radio this morning saying there should be another stimulus package, while he's saying there shouldn't be.
Point of order, Honourable David Cunliffe.
Mr Speaker, last time I looked, the Minister of Finance has no responsibility for members of the opposition.
Just, if the member would resume his seat for a moment, I'd just alert the honourable member to the fact that his own question was very marginal in terms of the standing orders, in that he can't question the government about statements or policies of something that the minister, as minister, is not directly responsible for, of a political party. And so he can't insist on an answer being absolutely within standing orders if his own question was very marginal with respect to the standing orders.
Speaker.
Honourable David Cunliffe, point of order.
Mr Speaker, the statements that I quoted by Leader John Key and by the Minister were made after the election while they held the positions that they hold now, and are therefore purported to be statements of government policy with fiscal consequences for which the Minister of Finance is responsible.
I'll take the honourable member's word for that. The Honourable Bill English.
Mr Speaker, I can confirm that the budget policy statement will outline what amounts to what Treasury calculates as a $7 billion stimulus into the New Zealand economy, which is made up of the 2008 budget, the 1st of October tax cuts, and the 1 April tax cuts that were legislated last week. Treasury estimate that over the next 2 years that amounts to a $7 billion stimulus to the economy, and that is one of the largest in the developed country, larger than Australia and comparable to the packages announced by the UK government.
Order. Pesata Sam Lotu Iinga.
What is the impact of the shortfall in ACC?
Parliamentary.
Honourable Bill English.
Mr Speaker, well, earners and businesses will hear about that impact when the Minister announces levy increases, but the part of ACC that is funded by the government has turned out to be $300 million short in the 08-09 year, and the Cabinet has already had to make a decision to add $300 million to government debt to ensure that ACC does not run out of money in March 2009 for the non-earners account, where beneficiaries, superannuitants and others who do not earn money are dependent to get their assistance for accidents they have. And over the next following 3 years, the ACC shortfall will add $1.2 billion unexpectedly to government debt.
Come now to question 3 in the name of the Honourable Chris Carter.
Mr Speaker.
Honourable Chris Carter.
Mr Speaker, what representations did the Minister of Education make to her Cabinet colleagues in the light of her commitment that teachers would not be included in the provisions of the Employment Relations Amendment Bill?
Point of order.
Point of order, the Honourable Chris Finlayson.
I didn't raise a point of order with the Leader of the Opposition misreading his question, but the Minister of Education, sir, has misread his question. He should read what is on the sheet.
He's not the Minister of Education.
Order.
He will be, though. He will be.
Order.
That was only a month ago.
Order. The honourable member is... Order. The honourable member... Order. I'm
happy to read it again.
The Honourable Chris Carter, for the members who didn't pick it up, the misdemeanour was very minor, read the Minister of Education instead of the Minister. Honourable Chris Carter.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister of Education, with a slight sense of irony. What representations did the Minister make to her Cabinet colleagues in the light of her commitment that teachers would not be included in the provisions of the Employment Relations Amendment Bill?
Point of order.
Point of order, the Honourable Rodney Hyde.
Mr Speaker, I know the Minister is unused to asking questions, but I think it would be good to get off on the right foot and not including an ironical expression and an epithet in addressing a minister.
Could I just ask the Honourable Chris Carter just read the question as down on the order paper?
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I felt that I had in my reference to irony.
Order.
Mr Speaker.